understand the liquidity trap, try to understand the situation which is happening right now in India. Correct. It is well established that people nowadays are not investing money. That means investments are low. Why these investments are low? Yesterday I told you one thing, that right now if you talk about saving interest rates, saving bank, saving account interest rate, it is 4%, right? And if you talk about inflation, inflation is around 6 point something, right? So if you saw effective return, effective return is said to be 4 minus 6, that is effectively minus 2, right? For example, if you go for real estate investment, then you will realize that if you have invested 10 lakhs in a property, if you have invested 10 lakhs in a property, then probability of getting it doubled in 5 years is comparatively very less, right? So most of the avenues of return in the market have gone away. Secondly, this money which you are investing in the market, it is a high probability that this 10 lakhs might turn into, either it will remain 10 lakh, right? That means when there is no return on the investment, that's why you are not motivated to investment. That is, there will be no investment, right? So during these times, what central banks do, central banks came up with the policies which are increasing high liquidity into the market. That is unconventional policies. So liquidity trap is nothing but the situation in which people are so demotivated that they are not bringing money into the market, right? And if you can correlate it with the times of 2008, what happened during 2008? Anirudh is asking, sir, regarding housing bubble, India has a huge population and continuous demand in housing sector. So can we say that the situation that happened in US will not happen in India? Okay. See, now again, we will repeat the situation what happened in 2008, the housing bubble, or how the situation of liquidity trap arrived. What happened in US, that when initially what were happening, that people were investing in the real estate, right? That means demand of real estate increased. And for example, initial cost of the property was 10 lakhs. Then after 1 year, 2 year, it becomes 15, then become 20. That means the real cost of the property was not there. It was inflated rates, inflated, right? Now what happened in the inflated rates? For example, an individual has taken 3 to 4 houses. It is very normal. I don't know about Hyderabad, but it is very normal in NCR. The people during 2005, people were owning 3 to 4 houses in NCR, right? So now what happened in US, when people, for example, an individual tried to uh, put out money from the market, anticipating that he will be having the profits, then he went into the market and tried to sell his 10 lakh property into the market. When he went into the market, then he observed that every individual is already owning a house. That means there was no buyer in the market. There was no buyer in the market. That means this 10 lakh, what he was doing, he has to pay EMI on this 10 lakh. When he realized that there is no buyer in the market, then he started defaulting on the EMI. When bank went into the market to put mortgage into the sale, that means this house was under mortgage with the bank. When bank into the market, then no buyer was into the market. That means the paper of the house with banks remain merely papers, because that 10 lakh property was not saleable in the market, right? And when bank observed that this is the problem with the economy, then they went into the market and they realized that there was so much supply of houses in the market that there are no buyers in the market. This was housing bubble. So during that time, if you realize those situation, then what does that mean? Individuals who are having money, if they cannot invest into the market because they cannot put money into the real estate because they knew that there is no future in the real estate. Now what will an individual do? The individual will try to keep money with him because he knows that it is a time of recession, and whatever I am putting into the market, it will turn into zero, or it will 100 will reduce to 80. So the thought process is that individual thought thinks that it's better to have money with me rather than investing it into the market. So it is liquidity trap. That means liquidity is trapped under your pillow, right? This is liquidity trap. Okay, Anirudh is asking, housing in India has a huge population and continuous demand in the housing sector. So can we say there's a situation that happen will not happen? See, in case of India, as I already discussed, yes, one of the fact is that, as I already discussed with you, that 60% of the population, if you see that why every developed country is looking for India, right? Why every dignitary is first coming to the capital market, sorry, financial capital of India. If you can realize, then 15 to 20 years back, the head of the state was first arriving in Delhi. But now dignitaries are either arriving in Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Mumbai, rather than arriving first in Delhi. There are certain reasons, because now international relations are based upon finances. And every country knows that India has a huge market. Keep it in mind. And this 60% of the population is having huge potential. And more than that, youth who has a lot of potential. So yes, one of the positive point of India is that uh, we are having the idea of demographic dividend, right? That's why there is huge demand in India. But still, this demographic dividend can convert into demographic disaster if these people are not employed. When people will buy your houses, when they are having purchasing power, when people will be having purchasing power, when they are employed. When these people are not employed, then in that case, there will be no sale of your houses, right? So yes, you are right in the sense that we are having huge demand, but this demand can also be a disaster when they are not having enough money, right? So I think it is clear now, the concept of liquidity trap. Any other question? And specifically talking about India, why India averted this housing bubble at that time? Because RBI was very cautious in those times, and came into the scene CRR, right? All these things were sufficient to regulate the banking sector. Even if you can recall in 2010-12, there were various news. Even this ICICI Bank came with public notice that they are not defaulting at all. It was public notice put up by ICICI Bank in national dailies, right? Because at that time, yes, financial institutions to an extent were pressurized, right? Because issues were also there. Issues in the real estate were also in India, but regulation of RBI, regulation of the government didn't allow those things, right? I think it is clear. Any other question? Right. So unconventional monetary policies. Unconventional monetary policies means you have to deal with certain exceptional times when your this conventional policies are not working fine. For example, conventional policies means repo rate, reverse repo, open market operation, they are not working fine. And first of all, you must be aware that whatever we have discussed, this we were discussing about short term loans. Keep it in mind, these are short term loans, right? So one of the instrument in unconventional monetary policy is quantitative easing. This is quantitative easing. It was a step undertaken by US. And what happened in quantitative easing? Actually, it was in many phases, right? First phase, second phase, third phase. And Federal Bank of US undertook this policy. So try to understand this policy. What happened during these times? Actually, the single objective of quantitative easing is to put extra money into the market. Now, from where did this extra money will come, right? So the idea is, the only avenue is what Federal Bank is doing. Federal Bank is putting money into the market by purchasing long-term government securities. This is long-term securities. Keep it in mind. This is long-term government securities. So quantitative easing literally is an example of OMO, open market operation, right? But it is dealing with the long-term government securities, because till now what we have discussed about short-term government securities, right? Because short-term securities are utilized for managing day-to-day liquidity, right? But these long-term securities are meant for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Now, if the Federal Bank is squeezing out these long-term securities, that means it is putting this amount of extra money into the market, which was supposed to come after 20 years. This liquidity is being injected into the market at this point of time, which was about to come after 20 years, right? That means the Federal Bank is injecting extra money into the market, which is not supposed to be in the market right now. So in the US, unconventional monetary policy took the form of QE. Under QE, the US Federal purchased big volume of long-term bonds. Bonds is nothing but it is government security from banks. When the Fed purchases bonds, its asset holding increases. At the same time, it expands money supply. Correct. So what was the impact? The interest rate will come down because there is huge liquidity into the market. Correct. Now see its impact, because if you though I asked you to go through the quantitative easing, if you see the impact of QE, right? See this cartoon. It will tell you the whole story of the impact of QE on America as well as on the world. This is US Federal Reserve. It is saying that once we stop the stimulus, their party will be over. What does it mean? And these developing countries are saying, enjoy the free flow of quantitative easing. What does it mean? See, what was happening at that time? The psychology of a businessman, keep it in mind, the secular religion of businessman is profit. Right? This is the only secular religion of the businessman. Now, what was happening in America at that time, that dollar was available to the investor, for example, at 1% of interest rate. Now, this at that time, developing countries were giving you the interest rates for around 8 to 10% in FDs. Now see, if this individual is bringing money here at one, then he will be taking 8% of interest rate, right? That means he will be having return of 8%, right? So this money, which was supposed to be utilized in America, was flown to developing countries by these investors. What does it mean? This term is capital flight. Note down this term. This is referred to as capital flight. Capital flight means this capital which was infused into the American market took a flight to the developing countries. So all the investment was into the developing countries. So what they are saying here, enjoy the free flow of quantitative easing. That means these all are developing countries. India, Africa, Indonesia, Brazil, Turkey, China was also there, right? So why these people were investing? These are the investors. Why these people are investing? Because here they are having cheap loans at rate of 1%, and they are getting return around 8 to 10%. And if they are investing it into this your share market, then it can go around 20%, whatever may be the interest, right? So it was the reason quantitative easing did not result into the required result which was anticipated by the US Federal Reserve, right? So this is about quantitative easing. I think it is clear now. So QE is nothing but it is an open market operation dealing with a long-term government securities, right? Negative rate policy. Negative rate policy means, see what happens nowadays. If you are going to a bank, I am talking about the Indian concept. You deposit money into the bank. For example, you deposit rupees 100. After a year, you will get 104 rupees. Correct? Now, what happens in negative rate policy? If the bank says to you that if you give me 100 rupees, then I will give you 96 rupees after a year, will you be motivated to put your money into the banks? Someone is asking, did QE have any big benefit to the US economy? See, what happened, because there is infusion of liquidity in the market. Yes, it helps the country, but to an extent it helps developing countries more than the US, right? But later on, if you realize that when Federal Reserve changes its policies, then that money started to go back, right? It was a reverse capital flight. So for example, if an individual put money to the Indian market, then when condition improved in US or federal policy changes, then that money was back to America, right? And besides that, even if 100 rupee, if $100 was injected into the market, then all the $100 were not coming into the India now. Might be at least 20 to $25 will be used in America, right? So at least this $20 were available in America, correct? So you cannot say that it was not helping America, right? Now, negative rate policy means, for example, if you deposited 100 rupees, then if you are getting 96 rupees, then you are not motivated to put money into the bank, right? So the objective is to put this money into the market rather than put it into the bank, right? Because during the liquidity trap, what people are doing, the people are put if people either can put with them or they will put it to the saving bank, right? Saving accounts. So the government, by putting following negative rate policy, is disallowing, demotivating those people to put money into the banking sector, right? So it might be seen during deflationary periods when people are inclined to hoard money rather than spend or lend it. Many European countries adopted this strategy, and Japan was very much popular for adopting negative rate policy, right? Coming to helicopter money. Yesterday I discussed a bit about this, and now this is in the news because your CM KC Rao has talked about this. See, helicopter money is nothing but the idea is uh, dropping the money to the individuals, right? For example, if you your this one of the economic survey, I think 2015, talks about basic income, concept of basic income, universal basic income, right? And if you see this Atmanirbhar package, it is talking about give if they have provided free food, extended free food to all, right? So it is not the concept of the helicopter money, but these are free doses provided to the people. Helicopter money, if you are putting money into the accounts of the people, as simple as that, without any obligation of repayment. There is clause is that it is non-repayable, right? So it is a money transfer which is not supposed to be repaid by the individual, right? So the idea is, if can negative policy now can increase the liquidity in the market? See, in context of India, see one thing, the situation, these are certain instruments used by the governments. You cannot say that it is the only solution. For example, the governments are also going for this quantitative easing. The governments are also going for helicopter money. The governments are going for negative rate policy. Negative rate policy is the option so that people can be demotivated to put money into the banks rather than they should consume, right? See, if you talk, if you can, Adam Smith, who was one of the economists, he says that money should revolve, right? The economy means it should revolve. The economy will only survive if the money is under rotation, right? So the idea of the negative rate policy is that the money should be in circulation, right? So negative rate policy is demotivating the people putting money into the banks and making it circulation, because if a person is having the money, so what will he do with the money? Either, if he is having money, either he can follow liquidity trap, or he will consume, right? Now this consumption will takes place only if he is having the money in the pocket, right? When he has put this money into the bank account, then there is no option of money to consume, right? Though he can also adopt the policy of liquidity trap, but he can only consume the money if he is having money into the pocket. So first prerequisite to consume is to having the money into the pocket, right? If this money is into the bank, then there is no money with the individual to consume. So by negative rate policy, the central bank is demotivating him to put money into the bank so that he can at least consume it. He can go for liquidity trap also, but the idea is he can also consume it, right? So this is the idea behind negative rate policy. So I think this helicopter money is clear. Okay. Even in the Indian context, prior to this, I discussed that Economic Survey has discussed this idea. Even a universal basic income is also almost the same idea. Incremental CRR. Is helicopter money and deficit financing by the RBS the same? Okay. Sir, can you answer my previous question? Yes, Suman Kasturi has asked me. Sorry, I forgot. I didn't go through your question. Let me take Suman question first. What were the changes, merits or demerits for India with QE? Okay. Did our economy grow during that period? Okay. And was there a drastic fall in GDP after the liquidity went back? See, if you see the effect of QE on India. So at that time, inflow of FDI was comparatively good, right? And it was one of the reason, it was not the sole reason, because there was sole reason, there were various reasons why India didn't went into the recession during the time of 2008. For example, the money was in circulation, and the reasons were Narega. Even the penetration of mobile phone was one of the reason. Mobile phone penetration, because people were executing their economic activities through these mobile phones, right? These are established facts. Even I think UN acknowledged all these facts, right? So at that time, because the money was inflowing into the market, that's why, see why India, because India is a capital hungry country. If you see, develop all countries require capital. For example, if you see the times of 1990s, why we were in a situation, so bad situation in 1990s, because our FDI was very low, right? So increase of FDI, increase the motivation, the strength of the government, right? If, for example, if you see the recent newspapers, you might realize that we are having FDI which can sustain 1 year of imports, right? This gives strength to the government, right? So during those times, during the time of QE, there was FDI inflow into the market, and that FDI inflow into the market uh, undoubtedly provide liquidity into the market because they flow of dollar, right? And for example, if there is dollar, then RBI took out this dollar from the market and put liquidity into the market. Ultimately, there was liquidity into the market, which sustains your economy, right? So did our economy grow during that period? Okay. And was there a drastic fall in GDP after the, see, keep it in mind that in Indian context, if you see the Indian economy is unlike China, and it is majorly driven by domestic factors. Keep it in mind. One reason why India didn't went into the recession, because India is not export driven economy. We are consumer driven economy. So when 2008 recession was there, then China went into the recession. Officially it didn't, when it shows manipulated GDP growth rate, but it was into the recession. But India did not went into the recession because we are already having our consumer base, right? So there was no drastic effect of this reverse capital flight on India. But yes, there was reverse capital flight from India. Is helicopter money and deficit financing by RBI the same? I think you have miswritten it. It should be government. Correct. Helicopter money is nothing but you have to take there will be a provision in the budget. Helicopter money will be having a provision in the budget, and ultimately it will lead to budgetary deficit or fiscal deficit. And fiscal deficit is a part of fiscal policy, which we will discuss later. And fiscal policy is the regime of the government. Fiscal policy is not the regime of the RBI. RBI is having control on monetary policy, right? Krishnakant is asking, if negative rate policy is adopted, okay, will the inflation increase because everyone will spend on market, or will it go to recession as there is no supply from the banks? See, there are certain situations which are so complicated that you don't know which thing is affecting the economy. So here we are only discussing that what will be the impact if we implement this policy. So don't, if everything remaining constant, then you can have, we can analyze the effect of negative rate policy, helicopter money. But you cannot at any point of time, you cannot say which policy or which thing will affect the economy. So if you talk, if I take your question, then you are saying that if negative rate policy is adopted, okay, will the inflation increase? See, if negative rate policies increase, then I stated that the situation can either be of liquidity trap or of consumption, right? For example, if you analyze the present situation, what is happening now? Do you see any increase in the consumption pattern of the people? People are only consuming the bare minimum things. Keep it, because people are already losing the salaries, right? People are losing their jobs. So in these times, you cannot, people are better at opting for this liquidity trap option. That means they are putting money with them. So if the government is, if the this RBI is coming up with the policy of negative rate policy, then I don't think that the people in this situation will consume, right, abruptly. Though the consumption will increase, but to an extent only. So the impact of the policy, you cannot say that this policy will only impact the economy, right? There can be n number of reasons. Sir, is direct benefit transfer to the poor? Yes, it is an example of helicopter money. See, conceptually, helicopter money is nothing but it is a money which is being provided to the people without any obligation for the people to repay it back, nothing else. Hemant is asking, if helicopter money is issued, means is that available for all the citizens or only poor, sir? It depends upon the government. For example, if you go through the concept of universal basic income, then that economic survey talks about every option. Even it is saying that one option is saying that government will deposit money into the account of Mukesh Ambani, right? There is one discussion like that. What does that mean? There are certain n number of permutation and combination. What will happen if we do that, right? What will happen if we do that? So there are n number of combination. Until and unless there is something in the policy, you cannot comment. There can be a number of policies. So talking about this helicopter money, the idea is only in the discussions. So government can take any call, right? Sir, is universal basic income the same scheme that Rahul Gandhi named as Nyaya? Almost the same thing, correct. I think he was advised by Kaushik Basu, right? He later on disclosed that when he, no, sorry, Kaushik Basu, the person who was awarded that Nobel for JNU guy, right? I am forgetting the name. He was advised by Nobel laureate. Abhijit Banerjee, sorry, right. Abhijit Banerjee advised Rahul Gandhi prior to when he was awarded this Nobel. Prior to that, he advised Congress government, specifically Rahul Gandhi, that Congress should go for any scheme like Nyaya, right? And it was almost the same thing like UBI, right? Even after when he was given this Nobel, then when he came to India, then he disclosed that thing also. Will helicopter money will be issued equally without any obligations? Helicopter money will be issued without. Yes, of course, there is no obligation on the individual to pay it back. I am repeating it again and again. Helicopter money or UBI, it will be free money to the people by the government. There will be no obligation of the people to pay it back, right? Okay, now incremental CRR. Incremental CRR, can you, anybody explain me, okay, I'll explain the situation, what happened during the time, and please explain me why RBI adopted the scheme of incremental CRR, right? I am explaining the situation, what was happening during the demonetization. What was happening during the demonetization, actually, in demonetization, banks were infused with liquidity, right? Because, and this liquidity was unique in the sense that banks were not in a position to give that money in the form of loan, right? I think you are clear, because the banks were having the liquidity in the old notes. It is clear, right? So old notes cannot be given to the people in the form of loans. That means there was no flow of liquidity in the economy, in the market, but the banks were having full liquidity with them, right? First thing. The second situation was banks were having two options with them. See, if you see the relationship of banks, bank is having two relations. One relation is with the RBI and another relation is with the customer. This option was closed in the sense that it was one-way traffic. It was not two-way traffic at that time, because customers were only depositing the money with the bank, correct? It was one-way traffic. Now the only option left with the bank was RBI, right? Now what were the options in relation to RBI and the bank? Now see, if you can recall, the first option is repo rate, second reverse repo rate, right? Now I am restricting your options so that you can apply your mind more accurately. Now answer me, go through the definition of incremental CRR and then tell me, see, incremental CRR nothing, right? Go through the concept. CRR is nothing. What RBI did, RBI increased CRR from 5 point something to 10%. Now go through the concept of repo rate and reverse repo rate. And third option, CRR. Can anybody hint me that why RBI adopted the idea of incremental CRR? Any idea? Any hint you can give to me? Why RBI came up with the idea of incremental CRR? That means why RBI increased the reserves of banks. You can take or consider the concept of repo rate and reverse repo rate. So you more specifically apply the concept of reverse repo rate. That is fine to absorb the surplus money of banks. That is fine. That is very much fine. But I am asking why it adopted incremental CRR only. Hint is reverse repo rate. Correct. Correct, 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 correct. Very correct. Anusha is right and Anusha is absolutely right. Right. See, now observe that situation, what happened during that time. Liquidity was high with the bank. This is bank. And it has to deal with RBI only. One option with the bank is to park money with RBI. And what it will do to RBI, RBI will have to pay interest rate. Right? The single reason was if this money was parked with RBI, then RBI was mandated to give back interest rate in the form of reverse repo rate. Then RBI said that why should I pay the interest rate on this money? Then the RBI came up with the idea of incremental CRR. Then say the banks, RBI says that now you are reserving 5 rupees, now start reserving 10 rupees. Right? It was a part of unconventional monetary policy because the situation of demonetization was not normal. Right? So incremental CRR was nothing but it was to absorb the surplus liquidity available in the banking system. Post demonetization, the RBI has mandated the banks to maintain incremental CRR of 100% effective the fortnight ended this, right? That means the single objective was to do away with the interest given to the banks on account of reserve repo rate, right? I think it is clear now, right? Now, LTRO and targeted LTRO are the recent developments. And it was part of Atmanirbhar package, right? This is to an extent, you can say, nearer to the this QE, nearer. I am not saying it is QE, part of QE, right? It is to an extent nearer to this QE. Now, what happens in this? LTRO is long-term repo operations. As the name suggests, it is actually repo operations, right? But the uniqueness with LTRO is we have used the term long-term. What does it mean? Repo operations ask for short-term, right? That means this long-term means you are being provided a loan for long-term at repo rate, as simple as that. And repo rate is always less than long-term loans. This repo rate is always lesser than the interest on long-term loans. For example, if we discuss when we are discussing bank rate, then we said that it was supposed to be it was said to be the long-term rates. If a bank is planning for long-term rate from RBI, then it is said to be bank rate. And bank rate is always higher than the repo rate. That means the RBI is providing long-term liquidity at the repo rate, right? See, one thing, this interest rate also depends upon the tenure of tenure of interest, tenure of time. For example, if you are taking loan for 1 year, and it might be at, sorry, 5%, and if you are taking out for 10 year, then it might be a possibility that it may be 6 or 7%. Now through LTRO, this 10-year term loan is available at the interest rate of 1 year interest rate, right? What does it mean? It means that long-term loan is available at cheaper rate. That means bank will be taking this money and will provide this money for the long-term capital investment, right? So LTRO is an unconventional measure in which RBI has given out loans for the period of 1 to 3 years at repo rates. The objective is taken to inject extra liquidity into the banking system. In the LTRO, RBI believes that offering banks durable longer term liquidity at the repo rate can help them lower the rates they charge on retail and industrial loans while maintaining their margins. Right. Secondly, this is TLTRO. This is LTRO. LTRO. Right. What does it mean? It means that RBI has mandated that this money which is coming from the RBI to the banks, it can be channelized only for the specified sectors. For example, what they are saying that it can move only, it can be given to the corporate bonds. That means you can invest into the companies, right? Now, when LTRO first phase was announced, RBI realized that most of the money was channelized only to the corporate house. Even it was argued by many of the economists, even there were commentaries across the newspapers that this money was only going for 1 or 2 business houses, 1 or 2 topmost houses, because no business houses is in a position to have the loan from the banking sector except 1 or 2 houses, right? So later on, RBI realized this and came up with the idea that second phase of LTRO will be applicable only to, that means the money will only be given to the NBFCs and microfinance institutions, right? So this is all about your conventional and unconventional monetary policy, right? Any question if you are not clear with the idea? See, Sarath is asking, will LTRO be given to selective banks? What are commercial papers? Uh, See, selective bank means, if you when we will discuss the banking sector, then there is idea of scheduled commercial banks, which are specified in RBI Act 1934. This we will discuss later on. So all the scheduled commercial banks are eligible for LTRO, correct? So we'll discuss it in when we will discussing banking sector. Suman Kasturi is asking commercial paper. Commercial paper, again we will discuss in this your market, right? But right now, keep it in mind, commercial paper is nothing but it is a debt instrument which is used by the industries or companies to raise money from the market, right? Does bank rate have collateral? Everything has a collateral. Whatever money is being transacted, it is not without any collateral. Any other question? Because today, if we are done with the questions, then I'll switch over to this GDP. And I'll try to actually, I'll try to cover only the basics, because we have gone through in detail in monetary policy. Because time is, I think I'll be taking three. Initially, we are planning for only basics in monetary policy also, but it was interest shown by you that we go into the deep. Is collateral and mortgage the same thing? Yes, collateral and mortgage are the same thing. So after GDP, I'll try to explain a part of this inflation, a bit about banking sector, not in detail, but I will give you a brief idea, right? In story form only. Then when we will discuss in detail, then we will discuss in detail. So in coming 1 or 2 classes, I'll try to summarize your banking sector, your inflation part and GDP. What is NBFC? See, NBFC is non-banking financial company, whatever you can say, non-banking financial company. This is nothing but it is an entity which is executing the functions of banking sector, but it is not bank in the real sense because it is not controlled by RBI Act 1934. So for example, if you see, if you have um, if you have seen the ad of this Muthoot Finance Company, which gives loan to the जब घर में पड़ा हो सोना तो फिर काहे का रोना, right? What does that mean? That means these people are doing the activities of banks, like they can provide you loans, right? So NBFCs, housing financing companies, what they are, and even in Hyderabad, you might be knowing about financial companies which are acting as, that means which are providing loans to the people, right? But these cannot execute the function of banks, like they cannot deposit the money from the common man like banks are doing. They cannot issue the checks. They are not part of resettlement system. For example, if you see the banking system, then there is system. For example, if you are doing NEFT or you are transferring money someone from bank 1 to bank 2, right? So what happens? RBI execute this activity, right? So they are a part of settlement system. It is we'll discuss all these things, but NBFC is not part of this RBI settlement system, right? How is NBFC different from cooperative bank? See, cooperative bank is controlled by Cooperative Act Society as well as some part of RBI Act, right? We'll discuss all these things in detail. Are mutual fund corporation NBFCs? You can say that. See, NBFC can be of any type. It can be housing financial company. It can be mutual fund type company. It can be or this loan giving company. I told you about Muthoot Finance Company, which is giving loans very popularly. Munnapuram Gold Loans, right? Which I think in your region. Any other question from what we have discussed? See, try to ask questions from the discussed part so that things will be more clear. Because whatever we are discussing now, whatever you are asking, we will discuss all these things in the coming classes in detail. So better is to raise query on the monetary. Can you explain TLTRO once again? Yes. See, the objective of LTRO is to infuse capital into the market, right? So liquidity is coming into the market. It is established through LTRO. Now, what is the objective of the liquidity? The objective of the liquidity is to support the sectors which are facing financial crunch, right? So when RBI announced first phase of LTRO, actually these are certain auctions. Practically, these are auctions takes place anytime when RBI will announce, and during those auctions, these banks, right, uh, participate in the auctions, and banks take that cash, and that cash is ultimately channelized in the economy. So when this liquidity was infused in the banking sector, this money went into the, ultimately went to the corporate sector. Corporate sector means industry. And it was being observed that most of this money went specifically to 1 or 2 big corporate houses. First thing. Now, secondly, RBI realized that if you have gone through the recent stories, you might find that NBFCs are facing financial crunch, right? They are one of the worst hit sector, right? So NBFCs are facing financial crunch, and secondly, these NBFCs are very crucial because it has been observed that the majority of capital investment into the infrastructure is not coming from the banks. It is coming from NBFCs. Keep it in mind. Major portion of capital investment is coming from NBFCs. So RBI decided that this money should also go into the NBFC, and secondly microfinance, because microfinance is directly dealing with the common people, right? So in TLTRO, what happens? RBI set up a guideline that where this liquidity will go, who will be the target of this money which is being infused by the RBI into the banking system. So after observing the first LTRO, RBI came up with the idea that second LTRO will go into this type of sectors, NBFC, microfinancing institutions, because these are facing the financial crunch, and sustaining of these sectors is crucial for the capital investment and for the common man. So targeted LTRO is nothing but channelizing the infused liquidity into the particular specified sectors. Sir, is the Atmanirbhar package a form of LTRO? Yes, actually LTRO is a part of Atmanirbhar package. LTRO is an example of Atmanirbhar package. Any other question? In LTRO, is RBI providing money short period, less interest, and for long term interest? Correct. In LTRO, money is being provided to the banks at low interest rate or at the repo rate for long term. So shall I start with GDP? Any other question from your side? From monetary policy, try to solve all the questions from pre. There are many questions in pre coming from, and if you are having any doubt, you can ping me one to one. Right. Coming to GDP. See, the best way to understand this GDP part, I'll give you certain in methodology how you will understand all the terminology, right? For example, this is GDP, we will understand GBA, then we will come market cost, factor cost, whatever things will be coming. We will try to understand in a literal sense only, so that you can understand everything very easily. Otherwise, it will be a complicated game. So first of all, we'll start with gross domestic product, right? In case of gross domestic product, it represents the aggregate monetary value of goods and services produced in the domestic territory of country in a specified time frame. So there are two or three terms which are needed to be understood: aggregate, monetary, goods and services, and very critical, domestic territory and specified time frame. Time frame is very simple. It is 1 year, right? It is only 1 year. That means whatever we will be calculating it over a period of 1 year, right? This is clear. Coming to the second term, aggregate. Aggregate means you are calculating everything produced in the form of goods and services in the market. One thing is missing in this definition. This is final value, right? It is the final value. Final value means that, for example, if I start with wheat, then it is bread, or in the intermediary there might be three products. For example, there will be fermentation XYZ, X1, X2, and finally if the product is bread 1 for example, finally it is the final bread, then this thing will not be counted anywhere across the economy, right? You will only be counting the bread in the economy, right? You will be counting the final value only. Final value means only the bread, and you will not count this wheat part or anything which will be used in preparing the bread. You will only count the bread part, right? Intermediary products will not be counting while you are calculating the GDP. It is done so as to avoid duplicacy of counting, right? So here only this bread will be counting. Whatever being used in this bread will not be counting anywhere else, right? So GDP is aggregate monetary value. Aggregate means totality, everything in totality. Monetary value means, for example, you have to convert the value of this bread in monetary terms, in rupee terms. For example, if one packet cost you 50 rupees, then it will add this packet bread will add 50 rupees to the economy. I am coming to a point, right? So this is clear. What is aggregate? What is monetary value? What is goods and services? It is clear. Domestic territory I am coming. In a specified time frame is clear. Now gross. Gross is nothing but aggregate in monetary terms. Product means final value of goods and services and not the intermediary goods, right? Now coming to the idea of domestic. What do you mean by domestic? This is India, right? So domestic territory means whatever is being produced in this territory. For example, it is first and foremost, it is not about the nationality of the individual. Keep it in mind. It is not talking about nationality, but it is a territorial concept or geographical to your understanding, which states that individuals who are within this territory, that means if an American is earning money in this country, for example, if Adnan Sami from Pakistan or Rahat Fateh Ali Khan is coming to India and they are earning, for example, 5 lakhs rupees, then this 5 lakh rupees is being added to the GDP of the country, because this 5 lakh rupees is being earned in the domestic territory of my country. So domestic territory here means everything within the territorial periphery of the country, irrespective of their nationality. So an Indian employed in America will not constitute Indian, be a part of Indian GDP. He will not be a part of Indian GDP, because this person who is in America is outside the domestic territory of India, right? So while you are calculating, understanding the GDP only counts the territory part, irrespective of the nationality, right? So the individuals, irrespective of their nationality, are working in the domestic territory of India will be counted for GDP, right? I think it is clear. So for GDP, you should only be concerned about the territory of the country. Sir, does an unsold good be considered part of GDP? See, unsold good means when you have not realized monetary value of anything, right? Then how you can calculate? If you have realized the monetary value of anything, then yes, it will be counted as a part of GDP. But until and unless you have not realized the monetary value of anything, then it will not be part of GDP, right? So I think the concept of if bread is sold in a retail shop to a final consumer and a restaurant, which makes us wonder how will it be counted? Bread both sold in shop bread, so or bread in shop bread in hotel. Bread is sold in a retail. Wait. If bread is sold in a retail shop to a final consumer and a restaurant, okay, which makes a sandwich, okay, how will it be counted? Bread. See, simple. You have to take in account the final. For example, if it is being sold in a shop and after being sold in a shop, it is being counted in a restaurant, then final consumption will be at the shop. Go at the wholesale value. Will the GDP be counted at wholesale value, retail, or final value? Will the GDP will be counted at wholesale value, retail, or final value? Wholesale value, retail, or final value? See, let me come to the calculation part of GDP. There will be try to understand how we will be calculating, right? There are three methods of calculation. There we will be try to understand how it will be calculated. There you will be understanding that, right? I'll explain it later on. It is in the slide itself, right? Now only try to understand here that this GDP is calculating everything within the periphery of the territory, correct? Now second is GNP. In case of GNP, we are only concerned about the nationality. Here we are referring to the nationality. Nationality means irrespective of the territory. For example, if an Indian is working, this is US person and this is US, this is India, right? And here it is American is working and here Indian is working. Then when I am calculating GNP, then I have to take in account the income of Indian residing abroad, and I have to deduct the income of the foreign individual from my GDP. That means I have to take in account only the income of Indian nationals, irrespective of their working territory, irrespective of their working countries. For example, all the individuals of India who are working wherever they are, they will be accounting for GNP. Keep it in mind, they will be accounting for GNP. So GNP represents the aggregate value of goods and services produced by the nationals of a country. The critical term is nationals. Here critical term was domestic territory, and here it is the nationality and not the domestic territory. So GNP is feature of an open economy, right? Why it is a feature of open economy? Because it is assuming that people are working abroad and it happens only in the open economies. So GDP is equals to, Adit is asking, sir, how will they know the income of Indian nationals who are abroad? See, if you are Indian national, then you have to file, there are certain income tax rules, right, in which you have to declare yourself that what is your status, right? If you saw income tax return, then there is proper status you have to declare about yourself, right? Even you have to file different forms for according to your residential, right? So there is no issue with that. You have to announce that every country is having a record of every individual who is abroad, right? So it is GNP is equals to GDP plus net factor income from abroad. I think it is clear. Net factor income from abroad means it is the money going out of India, right, should be deducted, and input inflow minus outflow, right? So this is how we'll try to understand the GDP, GNP and GDP. GDP is nothing, it is talking about domestic territory, and GNP is talking about the nationality. Net factor from abroad is equal to factor income earned by the domestic factors of production employed in the rest of the world, right? We are using the term factors of production, right? That means anything. It can be either of the four. It can be individual employed, it can be capital employed, it can be your entrepreneurship employed, or it can be your land purchased by the individual, right? Factors of production minus factor income earned by the factors of production of the rest of the world employed in the domestic economy, right? So this is how you will calculate GNP, correct? Next is NDP. Now again, try to understand the term net. Net. See, try to understand the term net. For example, if you have, I think you might all be having either scooters or car at your home. So you are also aware of the idea of insurance. What happens in the insurance, that every year there is reduction of the value of any item. For example, if you are having car of initially its value was 10 lakh, its insurance was of 10 lakhs, then after a year it will say that there is depreciation of, for example, 20%. That means after 1 year the value of the car will be 8 lakhs, and after again 1 year it will be 7.4 lakhs. What does it mean? It means that everything depreciates because of wear and tear. Everything depreciates because of wear and tear, and hence the monetary value of everything is deteriorated, is depreciated with due course of time. It is assumed that a part of anything is being consumed, and hence the monetary value of that thing is also consumed because of wear and tear. And net means, when you are talking about net accounts for your depreciation. So whenever there is term net, that means you are accounting for depreciation. So NDP represents the aggregate value of goods and services produced in the domestic territory of country, taking depreciation into account in a specified time frame, right? So depreciation is nothing but it is taking
Yeah.
into account the consumption or the depreciation of your investment. For example, if you started with a factory and you have accounted in the GDP in year 2020, for example, it was of rupees 100, then after 2021 it will not be counted as 100, it will be counted, for example, as 80, right? Then it will be NDP, right? So then coming to NNP, NNP is again nothing, net is clear, national is clear, right? So NNP represents the aggregate value of goods and services produced by the nationals of a country, taking depreciation into account in a specified time frame, right? It is, I think, very much clear. These are just definitions. Next, we will try to understand how GDP is being calculated, and we'll try to understand the questions which you have raised, right? These things will be clear in the next coming classes. Thank you.